Welcome back to Fantasy Files 1054 or FFX54 for short, where you can get all of your fantasy football content. We give you running back ranking videos weekly. We give you wide receiver ranking videos weekly, and we go live before kickoff every Sunday. So you can come in and ask your start-sit questions, hang out, play some bets, some friendly wagers, and just talk all things fantasy football. We're trying to get you to a fantasy football championship this year. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you are readily available to all of that content. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when these videos go live, as well as when we are currently live streaming on Sundays. And like the video when you do like the video, because I'm sure you will. But, man, tough week. First things first, let's just get it out of the way. Breece Hall, out for season. This is a very painful injury. For me, particularly, probably more so than Breece Hall himself, because I had him in fantasy football, and this really just dramatically decreases the odds that I get to the championship. He was looking like a league winner for me, but if you look at it in Breece Hall's perspective, how tragic is it to work your entire life to get to the NFL? You get to the NFL, and you are looking like you could be the running back one and most valuable fantasy playoff asset in the entire league. And of course, you are doing well for your team and giving your Jets a turnaround season. And, you know, all the stuff that's not important to the fantasy football community. How does it feel to have Breece Hall in your lineup, drafted in the 4th round, and now he's out for the season? Very tragic. It hurts a lot. But it affects a lot of our rankings. For some reason this week, it looks like we have a lot of very good running back options, which is very weird because this season has kind of been the story of bad running back options and not really having too many to pick from. This past week is shaking it all up. We do have some buys, but it doesn't affect the running back position as much as last week did. So let's just get right into it and see what we're looking at. But this is kind of, it felt weird to rank these players because for whatever reason, the first top 15, it almost feels like it could swing either way across the board because we have players coming off buys. We have players coming off of injuries, hopefully. We have players stepping up because of trades. We have players stepping back because of injuries. I mean, it's just a lot going on. So let's just get right into it, not waste any more time. I'm trying to get you guys this content in a more reasonable, timely fashion. So we're going to hop right into it with our number one selection, which should come to no surprise to any, and that's going to be Saquon Barkley versus Seattle. I mean, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now, you see Seattle as the 5th worst defense to the running back position, allowing 27 fantasy points per game to the position. So it's a very, very good matchup. Saquon Barkley is the number 1 running back on the season so far. We don't need to talk about this too much. I mean, needless to say, he is probably one of the only receiving options on this offense as well as running. So, I mean, we don't need to talk too much about Saquon Barkley. He's going to be our number 1. Right behind Saquon Barkley, we have Derrick Henry, which I almost put Derrick Henry as our number 1 today. And that's just, again, you know, if Saquon Barkley had a more difficult matchup, we would be seeing Derrick Henry as our number 1. But Saquon Barkley also has a very easy matchup. But that does not take away that Derrick Henry is going up against the worst defense to the running back position in the entire league, allowing 32 points per game in the Houston Texans. We saw Derrick Henry still involved in the passing game, getting 3 receptions last week. So if he's going to continue to stay involved in the passing game as well as get 20-plus carries as one of the league's most dominant runners on the ground, and all of that coupled with the fact that Derrick Henry is the entire offense in Tennessee, Derrick Henry is going to be an easy choice for number 2 for us in week 8. Right behind Derrick Henry, we actually have Jonathan Taylor taking a massive step up this week. We saw some life out of him last week. We saw him get the most targets out of the backfield that we've seen all season. But all of that couples with the fact that Matt Ryan is going to be out. It sounded like it was to injury, but it later came out that this might be just a move that they're making, which I don't know if I believe that 100% until I see it, just because of the cap space, the cap hit that the Indianapolis Colts are taking to start Matt Ryan. So I'll believe it when I see it, a healthy Matt Ryan getting benched for I don't even know who. But regardless, if we're not going to have Matt Ryan in there and we're going to have someone backing him up, being a rookie, I believe, then Jonathan Taylor is going to be something that the Indianapolis Colts are going to have to utilize the entire game. And that being said, we also have to consider that it was looking like Paris Campbell and Jonathan Taylor were getting so many receptions last week because of the lack of protection by the Indianapolis Colts offensive line. So if they're not going to have time to throw the ball downfield in the Indianapolis Colt offense, then it's going to bode very well for Jonathan Taylor's fantasy football production. He hasn't had that massive breakout game. We saw it last year where Jonathan Taylor was a second half of the season guy. So again, I don't even know if it's fair to hit this because he did have a 15-point week last week, but we're going to hit the trade target button one more time. And I know you guys are probably tired of me hitting that for Jonathan Taylor, but try to grab him as a top 10 running back when you go to trade for him in trade value, because I think he is still a top 5 running back, and you could probably get a slight discount before he has that 40-point massive game that, after that happens, he's going to be on lock for that team for the rest of the season. So I think Jonathan Taylor is in a prime position to step up to be what he was last year going up against the Washington Commanders, allowing 23 points per game. Not a very crazy matchup one way or the other. So we're not factoring that into the equation a whole lot. It's more about the quarterback that's going to be playing and the lack of production in the offensive line, which will actually bode pretty well for Jonathan Taylor and his passing game. So Jonathan Taylor is going to be our number 3 for week 8. Right behind Jonathan Taylor, we cannot deny it anymore, we have Josh Jacobs. It's to the point where, this is the 3rd week in a row he has dropped 30-plus points for a fairly good to, I was going to say fairly decent, but I feel like they're better than decent. A fairly good Raiders offense. And I'm going to throw it on screen just so you see it right here. Let me see if I can get this a little bigger for you. But you see it right there. We have Josh Jacobs putting up 30-plus point games 3 weeks in a row. And that's just something we can't ignore. And the reason that this isn't scary is because it's not in a overly efficient, like he's not just getting a ton of touchdowns and the numbers are skewed. If you look, he has had 28 carries, 21, 20, 13, 19, 10. He's been getting involved in the passing game, which we saw none of last year. He's been putting up well over 140 yards every single week for the past 3 weeks against, Houston was very easy. Kansas City was very easy. Denver's a pretty respectable rushing defense. You see it right here on the bottom left of your screen. So, Josh Jacobs, for whatever we may have thought about him coming into the season, just scratch it, because he continues to put up highly productive fantasy football weeks, and going up against the New Orleans Saints, who are a more difficult matchup, but nothing too one-sided, maybe top 10. We're going to have Josh Jacobs as our number 4 on the week, and he's going to continue to be shoved into your lineup for the entirety of the season, boding injury. So Josh Jacobs, number 4. Right behind Josh Jacobs, we have Nick Chubb against the Cincinnati Bengals. You see in the left of your screen that the Cincinnati Bengals are actually a very difficult matchup when it comes to the running back position, only allowing 18 fantasy points per game. And I think it is actually going to continue to go down because of the productivity that the offense has been having in these past few weeks. We've been seeing for a couple weeks now the offense of the Cincinnati Bengals continue to pick it up in regards to their efficiency and really just slinging the ball all around the field. And the reason that this is going to help their rushing defense is because if they're going to be up by a lot of points and turn it into a just slinging it around the field type of game, then the opposing team is going to be forced to pass as well. So I'm not saying that the Bengals defense is getting any better, but I think that the offense is getting a lot better, and the opposing team is going to have to keep up with it. But all of that set aside, it is Nick Chubb. He has been producing on another level. He's one of the best rushers in the entire NFL. The only reason his value isn't a little bit higher is because we've only seen 1, 3, 0, 2, 0, 1, 2 receptions out of Nick Chubb, which in a full PPR league is not the best. So top 5 option regardless of matchup, but we're not going to have him any higher than that. Nick Chubb as our number 5. Right behind Nick Chubb, we have Christian McCaffrey. This is another one where I think this is the last time we see Christian McCaffrey out of the top 5. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get up to speed and for the San Francisco 49ers to figure out how they want to use him in this offense. And regardless of if they know how they want to use him, he still has to get up to speed with the playbook. So Christian McCaffrey is going to be a muted version of himself for maybe another week. But after, he gets the hang of it, it's going to be a lot better of a situation than he had in Carolina. We still don't have an updated picture for him yet, but Christian McCaffrey on the 49ers, a highly productive offense without him. Now with him in this offense, he's going to have a lot more opportunities to score, and he will be a featured back for if you consider what they gave up for him. So Christian McCaffrey going up against the most difficult matchup in the entire league in the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to have him as our number 6, but look for him to take a step forward next week once he is settled in a little bit more. Behind Christian McCaffrey, we have Joe Mixon. We bumped Joe Mixon up a lot this week from where we have him ranked rest of the season because of this matchup. It's arguably the best matchup in the entire league going up against the Cleveland Browns rushing defense, which is allowing just shy of 28 fantasy points per game. And I think that, we were just talking about how the Cincinnati Bengals are starting to air it out a little bit more. I think this actually helps Joe Mixon because the line of the Cincinnati Bengals isn't made and isn't good enough to be running the ball down the opposing team's throat the entire game, which is what they were trying to do for the first few games of the season. And you saw this kind of translate into bad efficiency for Joe Mixon. Now with the passing game looking a lot better, it's going to force the opposing defense to back some people out of the box, allow bigger lanes for Joe Mixon to find, and a lot more red zone trips coupled with all of that. So Joe Mixon, going up against a very good matchup, is going to be our number 7 for this week. Right behind Joe Mixon, we have Dalvin Cook coming off of a bye against the Arizona Cardinals. We see the Arizona Cardinals are actually a very good defense opposing the running back position. However, Dalvin Cook, he has a fresh set of legs. We haven't seen him utilized as much as we would like if you're a Dalvin Cook owner in this Minnesota offense, this new and revamped passing offense for the Minnesota Vikings. They're also using Alexander Mattison quite a bit. Now look for a potential trade in the next couple weeks. We have the trade deadline coming up in the NFL. So if Alexander Mattison gets traded away, which is possible, then Dalvin Cook takes a massive step forward. But regardless of all of that, Dalvin Cook is still a supreme talent in the running back position for the Minnesota Vikings. And with this opportunity that he is getting and the skill set behind it, we're going to have him in the top 10 for sure at our number 8. Right behind Dalvin Cook, we have Kenneth Walker. We talked about some very, very sad news for one of our young gun running backs in Breece Hall. But right behind him is Kenneth Walker, who was the second drafted running back in this past year's draft, a rookie. Rashad Penny goes down a couple weeks ago. And ever since Rashad Penny has gone down, 3 games in a row, we've seen a massive touchdown out of Kenneth Walker. I'm talking big play capabilities. I shouldn't even say capabilities. Big play capabilities, but big plays every single week. I was losing it when Kenneth Walker had his big play this past week because if you saw the situation I was in my fantasy league, I had Austin Eckler and I had Kenneth Walker in the same game. And they were having decent games, and I was behind quite a bit in my fantasy matchup. And then before you know it, in the fourth quarter, we see Austin Eckler catch 7 passes out of the backfield and work his way all the way up to 37 fantasy points. And then we have Kenneth Walker break off I forget the yardage, but 60-plus yard touchdown also in the fourth quarter, I believe. So we went from mediocre production to just astronomical production in the very end of the game. And because of this big play capability and the amount of routes that we see Kenneth Walker running, the sheer talent, the Seattle Seahawks offense being better than we ever expected, Kenneth Walker is going to be a top 10 back until proven otherwise. I know the matchup is difficult going up against the New York Giants, but I mean, Kenneth Walker, a highly productive pass catching back on a good offense. I mean, you trust your eyes. Don't think about draft capital. Don't think that you might have just picked him up off the waiver wire a couple weeks ago. Just trust your eye test. And if you're seeing someone break these massive plays every single game, they're going to be in our top 10, and we can't deny it. So Kenneth Walker is going to be our number 9 of the week. Right behind Kenneth Walker, we have Alvin Kamara going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are going to be a decent matchup, allowing 23 point. I guess you could say it's a very good matchup, allowing 23.8 fantasy points per game to the running back position. But the story of Alvin Kamara is we still have a questionable Mike Thomas. We still have a questionable Jarvis Landry. Chris Olave is obviously looking good. He's going to be a smash play. We'll talk about him a little bit more tomorrow. But Alvin Kamara is looking like the old Alvin Kamara. Obviously, you have that suspension potentially looming for rest of season rankings. But on a weekly basis, going up against a very favorable matchup. Again, a pass-catching back who is efficient on the ground and is the majority of this offense with a lot of these key injuries. Alvin Kamara is going to be in our top 10. No questions asked. So Alvin Kamara, number 10 on week 8. Right behind Alvin Kamara, again, very somber news with Breece Hall at the beginning of this show. Got it out of the way. Very good news here for Travis Etienne owners. We had James Robinson get traded away because of the Breece Hall injury from the Jaguars to the Jets, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, which Travis Etienne owners have got to be ecstatic. I myself am a Travis Etienne drafter. I drafted him in the 3rd round. We've been waiting for him to pay off. It was already looking good because he dropped 18.8 points, I believe, this past week. He's another player that's given you a massive play every single game. And now that he is the 100% starter, he gets the goal line touches, he gets the passing touches, he gets the first and second down touches. We've seen the talent displayed on a professional football field at this point. Travis Etienne is going to be our number 11 on the week and potentially is going to be working his way into the top 10 conversation in weeks to come with this James Robinson news. So Travis Etienne going up against the Denver Broncos, who, here, I'll show you on the screen now, are a middle-of-the-pack rushing defense. We're going to have Travis Etienne as a smash play at number 11. Right behind Travis Etienne, because he's coming off of the injury very slowly, I might add. We expected him to be back last week. He didn't come back. So even though I think he will be back this week, he might still be on a snap count. So we're going to have to bump him down quite a bit. I think when he comes back to full health, he is going to be a league winner potentially. But for now, while he's still working back from this shoulder injury, we're going to have to put him behind Travis Etienne at number 12. But if DeAndre Swift is going to be back, we're going to have him as our number 12 because of that pass catching capabilities. Now, he is going to get some touchdowns vultured at the goal line from Jamaal Williams, still, regardless of health. So that bumps it down a little bit. But, I mean, we saw the productivity even with Jamaal Williams on the field early in the season when he was healthy. So going up against the Miami defense that is, again, middle of the pack, allowing 21.7 fantasy points per game to this position. DeAndre Swift is going to be our number 12, and we're looking for him to improve for weeks to come until he assumes his position in the top 10 once again. Right behind DeAndre Swift, we have Dameon Pierce, another guy you just cannot deny. Didn't mean to rhyme there, but it works. And this is what I want to throw up because I throw these scores up for the people that don't necessarily know the names, for the lesser known players in the league. But this is Dameon Pierce's box score in a full PPR league for the past 4 weeks. If we look, he has had 20 plus touches almost every single week, except for this week. He went up against the Los Angeles Chargers where he just absolutely steamrolled them, even though he did not have 20 touches. And he's been putting up very, very solid fantasy production since he's been the starter in the league. The first 2 games, he was actually working behind Rex Burkhead as a starter. So ever since he's been the starter, he has been producing at a high level. Going up against fairly bad matchups, but regardless of the matchup, you can't deny the volume. Dameon Pierce is going to be in the top 15 discussion for the rest of the season. At least that's what it's looking like now. So Dameon Pierce, another one of those rookie running backs that is just producing and looking very good, kind of shoving his name into the conversation of top running backs and RB1s at that. So Dameon Pierce is going to be our number 13 going up against the Tennessee Titans, which are actually going to be kind of a whatever matchup as well. So Dameon Pierce, number 13. Right behind Dameon Pierce, we have Leonard Fournette going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Also a whatever matchup, allowing 23 fantasy points per game to this position. We saw a really bad week out of Leonard Fournette and the entire Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. Unfortunately, I think that they turned it around against my Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night. Tom Brady on primetime is not something that I'm super excited to go up against. But it's clear that there's just this aura around this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that is just, it's like a wet blanket on their productivity. They just cannot get it going. Mike Evans said it himself. He thinks that drop in the beginning of the game kind of killed the entire vibe around the game, I guess you could say, and kind of just lost it right then and there. It's clearly an emotional reaction that they're having right now, and that's what's holding them back. And that's why I'm very scared going up against them on primetime, because what we do know is that Tom Brady is going to be playing. We know that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are playing. We know that Leonard Fournette's playing. And these are guys that have went to the Super Bowl together. They know how to string it together when it is important and when it does matter. I'm not giving Tom Brady a complete pass on this offense, but I do think that they turned around to a certain degree. And regardless of how the Bucs offense has been producing as a team, we see Leonard Fournette giving us very good fantasy point productions for the entirety of the season up until last week. So don't worry too much about last week. He's going to turn it around this Thursday. So he's going to be a top 15 option, and he could potentially be a trade target. I'm not going to hit the button necessarily for him just because I think that the owner is going to have a hard time coming off of him. Being that he had a 35-point game just 2 weeks ago. But Leonard Fournette is going to, I wouldn't worry too much about him and look for them to turn around against the Ravens on Thursday night. Right behind Leonard Fournette, we have Rhamondre Stevenson. We saw Dameon Harris come back to this offense last night, actually. And though he got touches, it wasn't much, and he didn't do much with them. I will give him a little bit of a pass, saying that he probably was on a little bit of a snap count with his injury just coming off of it 1 week ago. But Rhamondre Stevenson just looks clear and away better at the position than Dameon Harris does when he has the ball. And I think that even when there is a split, it's going to be more of a 60-40 than anything else. And Rhamondre Stevenson, again, if you're trusting your eye, Rhamondre Stevenson looks like the better back. Again, he gave us a very solid fantasy point week. I'll show you what he's been doing ever since week 3. He's been just giving us solid game after solid game, and this is something that we're not going to ignore, even with Dameon Harris coming back. So Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be our number 15 back on week 8. But one thing I will note is for these sneaky teams, these sneaky defenses, don't just see New York Jets and assume it's a good matchup, because the New York Jets actually bode very well against the running back position, which is why we actually have Rhamondre Stevenson a lot lower than we would like. The New York Jets have been doing very well. I'm curious to see how this Breece Hall injury affects the defense's productivity, because offensive efficiency definitely translates very linearly to the defensive productivity. So we'll see how it affects the New York Jets as a whole this week. I'm sure it's going to be somewhat of a hit. It's just how big of a hit are we looking at? But regardless, it's not the easiest matchup in the world. We have Dameon Harris back, so Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be our number 15. Right behind Rhamondre Stevenson, we have Aaron Jones coming off of a very good week. But unfortunately, he is going up against the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Buffalo Bills are only allowing 18 points to the position. One thing I will say is A.J. Dillon looks to be completely phased out of this Green Bay Packers offense for I don't know what reason. A.J. Dillon looks so good when he has the ball. And again, I'll kind of throw how he screwed me over this past week. I lost by 1 in my work league. A.J. Dillon gave me 1.6 points. So you can either blame it on A.J. Dillon or you can blame it on Michael Gallup. But regardless, A.J. Dillon is not getting very many touches, and that is why we're seeing these very good fantasy weeks out of Aaron Jones. And I think that they're going to continue to feature him with this Randall Cobb injury, with this potential Allen Lazard injury looming in the background. And Romeo Doubs looked like he just took 10 steps backwards last week with Aaron Rodgers' trust. So with all of these holes in the receiving game, we're going to continue to see Aaron Jones produce at a high level. It's just going up against a tough matchup this week. We have him bumped down a little bit. So Aaron Jones is going to be our number 16 on the week. Right behind Aaron Jones, we have Miles Sanders, fresh off the bye. Going up against a very favorable matchup in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Actually, not as favorable as I thought, but still favorable nonetheless, allowing 23.4 fantasy points to the position. The Philadelphia Eagles running game is very hard to predict, and it's kind of just like a lottery ticket. I mean, I guess every play of every week is kind of like a lottery ticket. It's just about your odds. And your odds are lowered when you have Jalen Hurts as your quarterback, stealing and vulturing some of those goal line touches. And then you have players like Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell coming in and stealing some touches at the line as well. So it's just a matter of who gets the hot hand early and who gets those goal line touches. But if it goes Miles Sanders' way, we've seen Miles Sanders produce at a running back 1 level on the season. So, I mean, you can't bench Miles Sanders, especially with the running back position and buys in the background. Odds are you're going to be playing him. And in a more favorable matchup than others, look for him to give you a very solid fantasy point production this week. You good down there? Sorry, my dog was choking on a bone. All right, right behind Miles Sanders, we have Raheem Mostert. I know a lot of you are probably shocked that we have him this high. Some of you maybe not. But if you look at the matchup right there, they're going up against the Detroit Lions. And if you look to the bottom left of your screen, the Detroit Lions are allowing 29.2 fantasy points per game to the running back position. And Raheem Mostert has looked, I mean, he's given us multiple weeks now. In the past 3 weeks, he's given, let me pull up his box score, but he's been giving us 20-plus point games more regularly than not. He's kind of one of those guys that you really just want to ride out the hot hand until he gets injured, because odds are injury is looming in his future, as it always has. But this is something you cannot deny. The Miami Dolphins have Tua back, so the offense is going to be a lot better than it's been. And with Tua coming back, we still saw Raheem Mostert get that volume in 16 carries and 4 receptions, giving 20.9 fantasy points on the week last week to this Pittsburgh defense. You good? You good? My underdog down there was choking on a buffalo horn again. But if we continue to go to back, I think this week right here, week 3, is when they changed over from Chase Edmonds to Raheem Mostert. And ever since then, he's been giving us respectable fantasy production, and that's the hot hand that we're going to continue to ride out, especially against the Detroit Lions. So Raheem Mostert, believe it or not, is going to be our number 18 running back on the week for week 8. Right behind Raheem Mostert, I'll go ahead and give you both. We have Chicago matchup, allowing 25 fantasy points per game to the running back position, and we're going to have the duo of Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. I have them as a duo this week for 2 reasons. One, Ezekiel Elliott is actually working to come back from I think it's a knee contusion. He got hit very hard in the knee last game. He ended up coming back into the game and scored 2 touchdowns. So it's nothing that is going to be threatening his activity. I guess it's not going to be something that he misses next week for. It just might put him on a little bit of a snap count and take his volume down a little bit. And this is something that we're going to monitor for the rest of the week leading up to the games on Sunday, being that we're doing this video so early in the week. So monitor this injury and see if it works up to be a bigger deal than it is currently. But regardless, I think that the touches in this Dallas Cowboy offense is going to be sprinkled out in a 50-50 timeshare. And if Tony Pollard has the hot hand in the big play, then you'll see him give you a solid fantasy point production. And then if we see Ezekiel Elliott giving us the ground and pound goal line touches that we usually do see out of him, then expect him to give you the more beneficial fantasy point production week. But it's kind of a 50-50 coin toss. That's why we have them as our 19 and 20 on the week in a favorable matchup. So Dallas Cowboy running backs as our 19 and 20. Right behind Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, we have Najee Harris. I hate talking about Najee Harris. I really do. I hate talking about him. Just because I think that the talent is so much better than what we've seen out of him. He was a first-round draft pick. Odds are he was a first-round draft pick. If he wasn't a first-round draft pick, he was a second in your league. And he just hasn't produced to that level at any point in the season. He's pretty much given you 10 fantasy points per game, every single game, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but you're looking at that 10-point baseline. And we see Jaylen Warren continue to work his way into this backfield, and I don't think that's going away. I think we're going to continue to see more and more of Jaylen Warren, because if you think about it on a coaching aspect, this is why we're seeing more and more. This is why we're seeing more and more committee backfields, because if you're trying to win the game, even if the talent is more supreme for your running back one, a tired player is always going to be worse than a fresh player. And you're going to continue to see people or teams utilize that mindset and giving split backfields. Last year, the reason Najee Harris was so efficient the reason he was so valuable was because he was getting every single touch and every single pass. And we just haven't seen that this year. And I don't think going up against a Philadelphia Eagles stout defense, it's going to turn around anytime soon. And it's actually probably going to get worse. So Najee Harris is going to be our number 21 in the week. I am sorry if he is a back that you have rostered, because your hands are really tied. You can't trade him for much. You don't really want to play him. And going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, I would hate to play him. So Najee Harris, 21. And I'm sorry if you own him. Right behind Najee Harris, we have Eno Benjamin. Now, we still have a questionable designation for James Conner currently at the recording of this video. So we're not too sure if James Conner will be back. If he is back, then you can put him in the spot of Eno Benjamin. But Eno Benjamin looked very, very good last week, giving us, I think it was like 23 fantasy points on the week. He looked good in the backfield. Oh, there's the underdog. Say hi, Zena. Say hi. Tell everyone you're good. You're not choking. You're all right. All right. He looked really good. And this offense in the Arizona Cardinals looks like they got the spark that they needed with DeAndre Hopkins coming back. Even with Marquise Brown, it still looks like the offense as a whole is better. Now that DeAndre Hopkins is back, I mean, that's something you would expect when one of the best wide receivers of our generation comes off of suspension. So with this higher productivity and more attention being drawn to the wideout position, it looks like it's allowing Eno Benjamin to get free and have more of an open box look when he's putting the ball on the ground through hit the passing game or the rushing game. So Eno Benjamin is going to be looking good, especially up against this Minnesota Vikings defense. Do I think they're worse than they are? Oh, there they are. Nah, they're about middle of the pack, right around the Ravens, allowing 23 fantasy points per game to the running back position. So Eno Benjamin in a decent matchup with a better offense than we've seen past is going to be our number 22 on the week. I don't know why I couldn't talk right there. I'm trying to rush through this to get you guys this video out in a timely manner, but it looks like we're already past the 30-minute mark. So while we're on the topic, drop a comment down below if you prefer for me to kind of get this out as fast as possible, and you're just worried about the rankings, or if you enjoy when I give a more in-depth analysis for each player. That would really help me out a lot if you go ahead and throw that opinion in the comment section below, just so I know, because I don't want to be rushing through this and tripping up on my words if you guys prefer a longer format anyways. So that's the feedback I'd really like to know. But right after Eno Benjamin, we have David Montgomery giving us a kind of whatever performance last night against the New England Patriots. He still was getting the volume. Now, it is looking like Khalil Herbert is working his way into this backfield as kind of a split backfield. What I was watching last night is Khalil Herbert was getting a drive here. David Montgomery was getting a drive there, and vice versa. It was kind of, I think the coach came out and said that they're riding the hot hand when there is one. So, Khalil Herbert, it's almost like a Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard situation on a worse offense. We have David Montgomery as kind of the short yardage bruiser, and then we have Khalil Herbert as the change of pace back. That's going to give you that burst of speed. So David Montgomery gets a very tough matchup in the Dallas Cowboys, only allowing 17.5 fantasy points per game. We're going to have him all the way down as our 23 on the week. Right behind David Montgomery, we have Devin Singletary coming off of a bye week, going up against the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers are allowing... Where are they? Green Bay Packers are allowing 23.7 fantasy points per game to the running back position. So also a whatever matchup. And Devin Singletary is kind of a whatever back. I mean, he's in a very good offense, but it's a passing offense at that. So this is going to be a guy that if he falls in the end zone multiple times, we are going to see him produce on a fantasy level. And if he doesn't fall into the end zone, then we're going to see him fall flat. So, sorry, I was just looking to make sure that the Kansas City Chiefs are on a bye. And the reason I'm looking for that now is because I see Devin Singletary very similar to CEH. And the reason I say that is because, yeah, they're on a bye. The reason I say that is because these guys are on highly efficient offenses that are a pass-catching threat, a red zone threat, can get it done on the ground if they have the volume, which they usually don't have the volume. But you're really just hoping that they fall into the end zone. The only difference with Devin Singletary and CEH, which is a massive difference, is that it's basically Devin Singletary's backfield with a little James Cook sprinkled in and an annoying amount of Zach Moss. But Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon are getting way more touches than those two are on the Buffalo Bills. So that's diluting CEH's value quite a bit. But Devin Singletary is going to be someone that you can play in the flex if you need to at our number 24 on the week in the running back position. Right behind Devin Singletary, we have Michael Carter. Wah, wah. I mean, this is really sad. I hate seeing Michael Carter on here. Not because I have anything against Michael Carter, but I just love Breece Hall so much. And I think this is the only time you're going to see Michael Carter. Maybe not the only time, but this is, I don't know. Maybe it is. We'll see. But James Robinson is coming to this offense, and what I believe is going to happen is Michael Carter is going to have all of the passing work, and James Robinson is going to have all of the important red zone touches as well as first and second down. So I think James Robinson will transition into the more valuable back in New York. But I don't think it's going to be this week. I think he just got traded yesterday, which was Monday the 24th. So I don't think he's going to be fully up to speed on Sunday. So I think he will need that week to kind of figure out the team and get an idea of his surroundings. On top of all of that, he actually is listed as questionable. He suffered a little bit of an injury last week as well. So this isn't going to be James Robinson week. It will be a Michael Carter primarily taking all of the touches, which is why we have him at the 25 on the week. I don't think Michael Carter is a supreme talent by any stretch of the imagination. And going up against the New England Patriots, who are only allowing 18.8 fantasy points per game to this position, I think that they lean on the passing game a lot more this week than we've seen past. So Michael Carter as our 25 on week 8. Right behind Michael Carter, we have Gus Edwards, the new lead back for the Baltimore Ravens. We have J.K. Dobbins out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, potentially out for the season. We'll see how that kind of plays out. And we saw Kenyon Drake return to his true self last week with 11 carries for 5 yards. So this is clearly Gus Edwards' backfield moving forward. He is still going to split touches with somebody, whether it's Kenyon Drake, Mike David. I mean, I don't even know who we have anymore, but Gus Edwards is the only relevant back in Baltimore currently, and we saw him give us a very solid fantasy. I keep saying fancy point production. I feel like that's not right, but anyways, he's been giving us a very solid fantasy games. Or he gave us a very, very solid fantasy game last week with over 20 points on the week, as well as 2 touchdowns to accompany with that. The reason that I have him so low, coming off of a 20-point fantasy point production week, is because of the 2 touchdowns. It was just a highly efficient red zone week for him. That's not going to repeat itself every single week. So I don't think he's going to be giving you 20 points every single week, but he's someone that you could throw into your flex and at least know that he will get some volume and will get some touches. He'll give you more than a goose egg, which is, in weeks like this when you have a lot of key players on buys, that's what you're looking for, is someone that you could throw in and not give you 0 points like Michael Gallup did for me last week. So even though the matchup should be tough and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers allowing 18.1 fantasy points per game to this position, we've been seeing them slacking, and I'm not going to give him a free pass like we have in weeks past with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. So Gus Edwards on Thursday night will be our number 26. Right behind Gus Edwards, we have Brian Robinson, basically giving us a repeat of what he did the first time he was a starter. Pretty much 60, I think it was like 16 carries, 60 yards. The first week he started to give us a touchdown. This past week he gave us some work out of the backfield through the air. But Brian Robinson is pretty much going to be your 10 points a week. He'll have lows of 5 points. He'll have highs of 15. But in this three-headed backfield of the J.D. McKissic, Antonio Gibson, and Brian Robinson, he's not going to be giving you massive fantasy point productions on a weekly basis, even though the talent is there. I just don't think that the offense is giving him very many red zone touches, and it's going to be in a three-headed backfield. So Brian Robinson going up against the Indianapolis Colts in a somewhat favorable matchup is going to be our number 27 on Week 8. Right behind Brian Robinson, we have Darrell Henderson Jr. going up against the San Francisco 49er defense. A very hard matchup for Darrell Henderson, but it's looking like Darrell Henderson is going to be that lead back in Los Angeles. Now, I will say Malcolm Brown was getting a concerning amount of touches last week. We'll see how that shakes out this week. I don't think that it's going to be Darrell Henderson's backfield, period. I think it's going to be that timeshare between Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson. We just got to see what that looks like with more, I guess, data to analyze now that Cam Akers is looking like he's on his way out of this offense. Sean McVay came out and said it's possible that they hash things out and Cam Akers stays, but it seems like it's kind of too far gone, and I would think that we're going to see a Cam Akers trade here in the pretty near future. So Darrell Henderson is going to be someone that is a serviceable back for you in your flex. But what I will say is it's a very good opportunity to try and sell him high while you might be able to go to someone that needs a running back in their lineup and sell Darrell Henderson as a running back one moving forward rest of the season. I don't think he gives you that running back one value that he gave us last year when Cam Akers was out with the Achilles injury. I think it's going to be a watered down version of that. So Darrell Henderson, serviceable player, definitely a player that you can start when push comes to shove, but not someone that I would be jamming into your lineup, especially with this tough matchup. Right behind Darrell Henderson, we have Kareem Hunt in this matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, very tough matchup. And I just don't think there's a lot of room for him to succeed this week. Now, obviously, if he falls in the end zone, he's going to pull the week out of his ass and give you something that you can be happy with. But aside from getting lucky with a touchdown, I don't think this is the week to play Kareem Hunt. Now, definitely keep him on your... I don't think anyone's considering dropping Kareem Hunt, but definitely stash him and potentially have someone throw Kareem Hunt into a package of a bigger deal, because what you're hoping for is a trade. You're hoping that Kareem Hunt goes to somewhere like the Denver Broncos, goes to somewhere like you don't want to go... I guess you don't really want him to go to Denver, but you want him to go to somewhere that he can have the starting job, potentially the Los Angeles Rams. So definitely someone that we're stashing. There has been trade rumors around Kareem Hunt, but this week I don't think you want to start him if you have the option. So Kareem Hunt will be our number 29. And the last on our list of top 30 running backs for Week 8 is going to be Jamaal Williams. I'll keep it sweet. I'll keep it short. I'll keep it simple. Jamaal Williams, again, is the goal line back. If he falls in the end zone, you got a week that you can be happy about. If he doesn't, you don't. So Jamaal Williams, if DeAndre Swift comes back, is going to be the number 30 on the week. And if DeAndre Swift does not come back, you can throw Jamaal Williams in that top 15 conversation and jam him into your lineups. But if we do see DeAndre Swift playing, you're not going to want to play Jamaal Williams if you have the opportunity to bench him. And if you do play him and if you're forced that hand, then you're hoping for that touchdown, much like a tight end, much like many of the tight ends have been this year, where it's basically touchdown or bust. So that is going to be the video, the running back ranking video for Week 8. We got it out to you on Tuesday like we said we would. We have these two dogs going crazy, looking for me to spend some time with them. So we're going to wrap this up. Go hang out with the dogs. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the wide receiver ranking videos. Peace out. And if you enjoyed the video, please like it. Thanks again, and I'll see you tomorrow.